Think and behave like someone who lives in abundance. Take control of your life with the confidence of someone who knows their destiny and never questions their own strength. Start making decisions with determination, as if victory were already guaranteed on your path. Take a moment to reflect. If you knew with certainty that everything would turn out well, how would you face today's challenges? What choices would you make without hesitation? What fears would you leave behind forever? That kind of attitude holds genuine power. It frees you from the prison of doubt and leads you to the territory of action. That space where the mind imagines possibilities and the body moves into motion. Those who believe that happiness is only a matter of time move forward with lightness, clarity, and courage. On the other hand, those who live expecting the worst give up before even starting, even when they carry within them a strength that has never been awakened. This episode focuses on that, adopting the mindset of someone who already lives in abundance. You will understand why acting as if victory were already yours transforms your vision, opens paths, and attracts opportunities that once seemed out of reach. And it all begins with a single decision. Write in the comments, "Today I start acting. I am stoic." Especially if you've never commented before, because that will be your first broken obstacle. Inertia. No real change happens without taking a step. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Behave like a person who lives in abundance. Everything you focus your attention on expands and strengthens. This applies to your attitudes, your thoughts, and above all, the image you project and build of yourself. If you spend your life telling yourself that you're not ready, that you're missing something, or that it's not your time yet, your brain will begin to protect you precisely from the thing you desire the most. It will interpret that trying is dangerous, that the safest option is to avoid it, and it will start closing the door to opportunities even before they appear. This isn't just motivational talk, it's pure biology. Your brain has a mechanism called the reticular activating system, which works like an automatic filter. It selects what information reaches your consciousness based on what you most believe, think about, and expect. In other words, if you expect scarcity, your mind will overlook opportunities for growth. But if you act like someone who already has value, who already has something valuable to offer, and who already belongs in the place they want to be, your brain will start working in your favor. It will activate ideas, generate connections, attract resources, modify your behavior, and the world will respond to the energy you project. Imagine two people in the same situation. Both are invited to lead an important meeting. The first spends the day repeating to themselves, "I'm not good at this. I'm going to freeze. I don't have the same talent as others." When their turn comes, they shrink their body, avoid eye contact, and forget the key points of their speech. The second person tells themselves, "If they've called me, it's because I have something valuable. I may be nervous, but I know I can contribute and do well." They take a deep breath, stand up confidently, and deliver their presentation with clarity and impact. What was different? The content was almost the same, but the identity each one assumed before the challenge completely changed the result. Epictetus put it this way: "It's not what happens to you that matters, but how you react to it." And that reaction begins long before anything actually happens. It starts with the thoughts you cultivate, the phrases you repeat, and the posture you practice, even silently, every single day. That's why, if you want to live in abundance, stop acting like someone who always arrives late, who always falls short, or who needs one more piece of proof to feel worthy. Behave like someone who already has value, who has already built consistency, and who is ready to experience something greater. If you want your mind to collaborate with your growth, adjust your radar to focus on what strengthens you. Think, speak, and move as if you already possess what you desire. Because that's how the mind learns, and that's how reality begins to transform. If this message resonated with you, leave in the comments, "Today I act with the confidence of someone who already is." That is the first step to living as a truly abundant person. Lesson 2. People who live in abundance choose carefully who they surround themselves with. Your mind only truly begins to expand when you decide to step away from what limits your vision. It's not that you lack the ability to grow, it's that you might be trying to bloom in barren soil. Environments filled with negativity, shallow conversations, and people who repeat over and over, "That's impossible," slowly erode your progress and weaken your confidence without you even noticing. On the other hand, when you get close to those who think big, to those who have already achieved results beyond the ordinary, and to those who speak with determination about growth, discipline, and purpose, the idea that something is possible begins to gain strength. Consider this. For someone living in an environment where earning $10,000 a month seems like a miracle, any ambitious goal will sound like arrogance. But if you walk alongside people who make $10,000 a week, you'll discover it's not about genius or luck. It's about action. It's about mindset. And that's where everything starts to change. What once seemed like a distant dream becomes a concrete reference. What once seemed bold now feels logical. Because when you connect with people who are already living what you desire, your brain stops seeing it as fantasy and starts treating it as an achievable plan. Epictetus said it clearly. We often become what we contemplate. What you see, hear, and absorb day by day is shaping what you believe is possible. And that sets the pace of your transformation. If you feel stuck today, don't just look for new goals, look for new mirrors. Surround yourself with people who inspire you to grow without guilt, with environments that awaken your courage, and with living examples that prove it's possible to go further, even starting from the same place you did. It's not necessary to cut ties with anyone, but it is necessary to learn how to measure and dose. Ask yourself, who do I listen to with an open heart? Who do I allow to influence my way of thinking? And who only deserves a polite greeting? Abundant people don't isolate themselves, but they choose their surroundings with intention. They know that while the environment doesn't define everything, it can either accelerate or sabotage everything you're trying to build. So, if you want to live in abundance, start with this affirmation. If it was possible for someone, it can be possible for me too. And if this message resonated with you, leave in the comments. I'm surrounding myself with what strengthens me. Because a simple change in your environment can be the starting point for a new reality. Lesson 3. Abundant people see themselves with greatness. You can have preparation, talent, and even all the opportunities in your favor. But if deep down you still see yourself as limited, insufficient, or unworthy, your life will continue to reflect that distorted image. Because in the end, it doesn't matter what the world thinks. What truly guides your decisions is not the external voice, but the way you see yourself when no one is watching. It's like trying to build a castle on soft sand. No matter how impressive the structure, if the foundation is weak, the first challenge will cause it to collapse. Abundant people are not born feeling ready for everything. They choose day after day to act like someone who is still under construction, but who already considers themselves worthy of the life they want to live. Think about this. How many times have you sabotaged yourself because you felt less than? You accepted less than what you wanted even though you knew you deserved more. You stayed silent to avoid making others uncomfortable, or you apologized for existing when all you really needed was to stand firm. Now imagine those same situations but reacting like an abundant person, someone who recognizes what they carry within, even if they are still growing. Someone who doesn't settle for scraps because they are clear about their own worth. That is reflected in the tone of voice and posture in the way they look at others. Epictetus said, "Nothing great is created suddenly. If you want a fig, you must wait for the fruit to bloom." You won't wake up tomorrow feeling unshakable, but you can start today acting like someone moving toward greatness. And that is the decision that changes everything. It's not about deceiving yourself, but about practicing the identity you want to inhabit. It's like rehearsing over and over your strongest, most grounded version, the one that aligns with the life you're building. The more you repeat it, the more natural it becomes because your brain learns through repetition, and you are the one setting the example. If you see yourself as weak, every action you take will reinforce that fragility. But if you start treating yourself with respect, presence, and inner authority, you send a clear message to the world. I am not the pain I lived through, I am the strength I chose to develop. You are not the label someone gave you. You are the decision you make today about who you want to become. Maybe in the past you didn't know how to protect yourself, value yourself, or act differently, but now you do. And that gives you power. Every time you take a stand, even if you're shaking inside, every time you value yourself, even if no one applauds, you are building a new mirror. And in that mirror, you no longer see a victim, you see someone growing with awareness, courage, and direction. If this is the identity you want to strengthen, write in the comments. I choose to see myself with greatness, because this is how truly abundant people act. Lesson 4. Act as if victory were already guaranteed. Imagine an actor about to step onto the stage. They haven't received applause yet. They still don't know if the audience will approve, but they breathe, walk, and speak as if they were already completely immersed in their character. They don't wait for recognition to act. They act first, and the recognition comes afterward. The same applies to you. Before the conquest comes the posture, before the result comes the energy. If you want to transform your reality, you must start behaving like someone who is already moving steadily toward what they deeply desire. This is how the mind is reprogrammed. The brain doesn't distinguish between what is real and what is vividly imagined with full conviction. When you start acting like the person you want to become, your mind accepts it as truth and begins to create new patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior. This is called mental reprogramming, and it begins with a simple but powerful attitude. Acting as if victory were already guaranteed. It's not arrogance, it's living with direction, intention, and presence, as if it were only a matter of time, as if the pieces were already aligning for everything to work out. That way of acting transforms your tone of voice, your energy, and the way the world perceives you. Think about someone who wants to open a business. If that person behaves like someone who doubts their own project, everyone notices. Their voice shakes, their posture shrinks, and insecurity shows in every gesture. And even if they have talent, no one trusts them. Why? Because they don't even trust themselves. Now imagine that same person positioning themselves as someone who fully believes in what they are building. Even without results yet, they speak clearly, project purpose, and that sparks interest, respect, and opportunities. People perceive and trust those who already trust themselves. Marcus Aurelius said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, fear, doubt, and judgment, all those things that seem to hold you back, can become the fuel that drives you forward. But to achieve that, you first have to move. Don't wait to feel ready. Act like someone who has already decided not to turn back. Act like someone who has already decided to win. If today were the day when everything began to work out, how would you behave? What clothes would you wear? What expression would you have on your face? What energy would you transmit? Start acting that way right now. Move with firmness until that firmness becomes part of you. Train your mind to think clearly until it becomes natural. Behave like someone courageous until courage flows effortlessly. If you want to feel abundance, you must first think, speak, and move like someone who already lives in abundance. Even if the external reality doesn't show it yet, it's not a lie. It's your identity in training. Abundant people do this every single day. If you already feel that change starting within you, leave in the comments, "I'm training for my victory." Because when that happens, you stop chasing results and start attracting what has been waiting for you all along. Lesson 5. Abundant people have presence. Before you say a single word, the world has already received your message. The way you walk, sit, look, and occupy space communicates more than you imagine, even in silence. The body is a silent but incredibly powerful speech. It reveals how much you respect yourself, how much you trust yourself, and how willing you are to grow. If you live with slouched shoulders, speak with a muted voice, avoid eye contact, and move as if apologizing for existing, you're not only showing insecurity, you're reinforcing it without realizing it. When you shrink on the outside, your mind learns to shrink on the inside. Now imagine the opposite. Picture yourself walking out of your dream home, getting into the car you've always wanted, on your way to the most important meeting of your life, dressed in the clothes that best reflect who you are. How would you act in that moment? Would you breathe more deeply? Would you hold eye contact more firmly? Would you walk with greater determination? That's the key. You can bring that feeling into the present, here and now. You can move today as someone who is already building that future. When you do, your energy changes and your mind follows, because your brain is constantly observing your body and adjusting your self-image based on what you do. That's why simple gestures like lifting your head, straightening your back, looking others in the eyes, and speaking clearly carry tremendous power. They are not just appearances, they are identity practice. They teach your body to feel in control. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That mastery begins with what you transmit without even being aware of it. It's not about pretending to be someone you're not, but about aligning your body with the person you have already decided to become. That version of you that is being born and just needs space to grow. You don't need expensive clothes, but you do need intention, presence, and gestures that say, "I know why I'm here." Because someone who walks with direction even without knowing the ending yet already inspires confidence. Today, pay attention to your body, your tone of voice, and your posture, and ask yourself, is this aligned with the person I am becoming, or does it still reflect traces of the old version I've already decided to leave behind? Transformation begins in the body and identity comes afterward. Abundant people know this. They don't just think differently. They also move like someone who is already clear about where they're going to arrive. Reaffirm it by leaving in the comments, "My presence already carries my future." Because when the body starts acting with purpose, the mind begins to believe that everything is possible. Lesson 6. Abundant people choose carefully the voice they listen to within themselves. You don't wait until you're dying of thirst to drink water, right? So why keep waiting until you're broken inside to start treating yourself with respect? The way you speak to yourself determines far more than you imagine. It shapes your self-confidence, strengthens or sabotages your ability to respond to challenges, and influences how you show up in the world. The most alarming part? Many people remain stuck for one single reason: the wrong inner voice. Do you want to change? Then start by changing the tone. Talk to yourself the way you would talk to someone you deeply love. This isn't about filling yourself with empty compliments. It's about genuinely supporting yourself. It's about learning to correct yourself without destroying yourself, to give yourself direction without humiliation. It's about becoming your ally, not your worst enemy. Because what you hear in silence each day shapes the life you live out loud. Phrases like, "I'm terrible at this," "I'll never make it," or "That's not for me," may seem harmless, but they become constant mental repetitions, a background soundtrack in your mind. And your brain, which is moldable, doesn't stop to question whether it's true or not. It simply records it and acts accordingly. Modern neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, but the Stoics understood it over 2,000 years ago. As Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In other words, repeat it and your mind will believe it. Affirm it and it will adapt. Without realizing it, the habit of minimizing yourself becomes part of your identity and sets your limits. Then you wonder, why can't I change? But how can you change if you keep feeding the same story you're trying to leave behind? Think about a real example. Someone decides to go back to school after many years. They buy supplies, attend the first classes, but at the first mistake, that old voice returns. "You're too old for this." Or, "You can't even understand the basics." Instead of adjusting course, that person begins to doubt themselves, and they quit. Now imagine that same voice saying something different. "Every beginning is difficult, but you had the courage to try." Or, "It's better to make mistakes while learning than to quit without ever knowing how far you could have gone." Do you see the difference? This isn't shallow motivation, it's real internal support. Because no one abandons a dream purely from lack of ability. People give up because they feel alone inside their own mind. Epictetus summed it up perfectly. Your mind will be like its habitual thoughts. Molding the mind requires actively retraining that voice that lives inside you. Your brain responds to the tone you use with yourself. If you call yourself clumsy, it believes it. If you remind yourself you're learning, it relaxes and learns better. That difference changes everything: how you study, how you handle criticism, how you recover from mistakes. You don't need to justify yourself, but you do need to stop attacking yourself. Think like a good coach, firm but fair. Correct without humiliating. Demand but support. Because the voice you cultivate in silence shapes the version of you that you show to the world. And if you want to act like an abundant person, you must start on the inside, replacing toxic self-criticism with a language of growth. Make it clear in the comments: I'm changing the voice that lives within me, because those who learn to treat themselves with respect begin to conquer what once seemed unreachable. Lesson 7. Abundant people pay the price before receiving the reward. Those who have already reached the place you aspire to be first put in the effort, then they received the benefit. They woke up early when they could have chosen comfort. They said no to distractions even when everything in them wanted to say yes. They gave up what was easy and chose what was right. If you want to live with more freedom, purpose, and self-respect, start now by behaving like someone who is already on the way. Every difficult choice you make today is a real brick in the construction of the future you want to live in. Do you want to be disciplined? Wake up as a disciplined person would, even when the bed is calling. Do you want to be recognized? Study, practice, and persist, even when no one is watching. Do you want a lighter future? Learn to manage the present, educate yourself financially, and live within your means. Say the necessary no's and adjust your course. You don't have to wait until you've achieved something to act as if you already have it. In fact, when you act as if you already are, that's when you truly begin to be. Think about an athlete who has not yet stood on the podium but already trains like a champion, eats like a champion, and rests like a champion. And it's not just their body that's preparing, it's their mind that begins to embrace, this is already part of who I am. Marcus Aurelius put it this way: what is hard to bear becomes valuable when it is overcome. Sacrifice is not a punishment, where it's a construction. It's a silent declaration that you know where you want to go and that you're willing to pay the price to get there. The mistake is thinking that effort comes after success, when in reality, effort is success in motion. Every time you choose the harder path, reading instead of distraction, training instead of laziness, silence instead of impulsive reaction, you're strengthening your character. You're practicing the life of the person you want to become. Now ask yourself, if you were already that person, what sacrifices would you naturally take on? Start there. Not sure where to begin? Observe those who have already made it. A healthy body. How does its owner think? A successful person. What is their routine, their boundaries, their relationship with money? A serene person. How do they react in the face of chaos? A generous person. How do they position themselves in life? Study those attitudes and don't just admire them from afar. Integrate them into your own life. Because when you start acting with an abundance mindset even before you have the results, the world notices. The doors that once seemed closed begin to open. People sense your firmness, your focus, and your intention, and the opportunities that once passed you by now recognize that you are ready to take your place. Abundance doesn't arrive by chance. It responds to the level of presence and commitment with which you move. And the more you live as someone determined to build what they want, the clearer it becomes to the world that you are ready to receive it. If you've already made that decision, write in the comments. I am paying the price for my growth because life charges a price from everyone, but only those who pay with courage receive with consistency. Lesson 8. Don't limit yourself out of fear of what others might think. Few things are as paralyzing as the fear of other people's judgment. You know what you want to say, you know what you'd like to do, but the moment you think about expressing yourself, your mind already anticipates stares, criticism, or mocking smiles. You don't post what you think because you imagine they'll laugh. You don't dare try something new because you hear in your head critical voices that haven't even spoken yet. That fear is subtle. It doesn't block you with brute force. It convinces you with seemingly logical reasons. It's going to seem forced, It's not the right time. What if no one likes it? And so you end up storing away ideas, opinions, and talents, until little by little you forget what it's like to act for yourself. You fear seeming over the top, being misunderstood, or not being accepted. And that's okay. Everyone who has truly grown has felt that at some point. The difference is that they moved forward because they were more committed to their truth than to applause. The fear of seeming like an imposter is the toll you pay when you're in the process of transformation. Pay it and keep going, because the truth, even when it stings, also sets you free. You're already being judged even if you say nothing, even if you try to please, even if you hide. There will always be someone who criticizes. So why not be judged for being yourself instead of being praised for maintaining a version of you that doesn't truly represent you? Think about a real example. A woman dreams of starting a cooking channel on YouTube, but never records a single video because she's self-conscious about her voice. She compares herself to people who've spent years in front of the camera, forgetting that everyone starts from zero. She sabotages herself before even trying. Meanwhile, another person with less skill, fewer resources but more courage, takes the leap. They record, they make mistakes, they learn, and they grow. Epictetus said it plainly: if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish. That means accepting looking awkward at first, not pleasing everyone, and facing the discomfort of being different. That is the price of freedom. If you don't have the courage to be who you are, you'll end up living a life written by others. You'll become a character, and the world will never know your true essence. Freedom begins when you stop asking for permission. And when that happens, everything changes. Your attitude, your decisions, the relationships you choose to keep. Because those who stop bowing to the judgment of others finally walk with their heads held high. If this idea resonated with you, leave in the comments: I no longer ask for permission to be who I am. Because abundant people know this. The only approval you need to start living is your own. Lesson 9. Abundant people see challenges as a natural part of the journey. Everyone wants to grow, but almost no one wants to be tested. However, there is no evolution without confrontation. Those who aspire to a greater life must stop running away from the trials that life itself brings, because they are not punishments. They are invitations to rise higher. They are natural filters that separate mere desire from true decision. Life will not ask you if you are ready. It will simply place something difficult in front of you without warning, and watch. Will you retreat, or will you use it as fuel? Some people, when faced with the first difficulty, give up. They see the obstacle as a threat and interpret the challenge as a personal attack. Abundant people, on the other hand, think differently. They take a deep breath, refocus, and face it as training. They know that making mistakes is part of the process, but standing still has never been an option. Imagine a marathon. At the starting line, everyone looks confident, but the truth shows itself halfway through, when that steep hill appears, demanding everything you've got. That's where you can tell who just wanted to show up and who came to win. Some complain, slow down and look around. Others speed up, understanding that the hill is not the end, but the filter between comfort and growth. Marcus Aurelius said, "God gives you not what you want, but what you need to grow." And many times what you most need is exactly what makes you the most uncomfortable. An unexpected criticism, a plan that fails, a disappointment that becomes the spark for transformation. Life isn't trying to knock you down, it's trying to reveal you. If you back down at every challenge, you'll never know what you're made of. It's not the obstacle that stops you, it's the meaning you assign to it. When you change that meaning, your view of the world changes. Pain becomes strength, a fall becomes momentum, and a challenge becomes preparation. Repeat this now. Life is not against me, it is shaping me. And write this here. I am treating every challenge as a stepping stone, because that's how abundant people move forward. They don't run from the uphill climb. They take it with purpose. Lesson 10. Act like someone who has already decided to be. True transformation doesn't start with speeches, it starts with attitude. You can say you're going to change, that this time it's for real. But if you repeat the same habits and justify them with the same excuses, Your mind will understand it's just another illusion. Your brain doesn't learn from what you wish, it learns from what you reinforce. If you say, "I'm going to wake up early," but then hit snooze for 5 more minutes, it interprets, "This isn't a priority." If you affirm that you're going to work out but postpone it again and again, it registers, "This intention isn't solid." When you don't even believe your own word, everything begins to crumble from within. Nothing around you can stand if your internal foundation is cracked by inconsistency. Think of someone who wants to be more productive. They make lists, consume content about focus, post motivational quotes, but live trapped by social media, procrastination, and lack of direction. The intention is there, but their actions scream the opposite. Epictetus said, "Don't pride yourself on knowing what should be done. Act, because knowledge without action transforms no one." Real change doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins with small, firm decisions. Turning off the phone, keeping a simple promise, facing laziness with action, finishing what you start even without motivation. Want more confidence? Stop feeding doubt with every step. Want more discipline? Act like someone who honors their time. Want to have more presence? Be fully where you are without half your mind somewhere else. You won't become strong by accident. You'll become strong because you choose to act with strength even on weak days and because you persist even when no one recognizes it. That's why so many give up. They expect change to come before they act. But the real path is this. You only start to feel different when you start to behave differently. Abundant and successful people live this way. They don't wait to feel ready to start. They start, and confidence grows in the process. If you've made it this far, it's because something in you has already awakened. You've stepped out of autopilot, you've seen your own patterns, and that alone is already a huge shift. You don't need to be perfect tomorrow, but you do need to show, through small actions, that you take your growth seriously. Marcus Aurelius said, "Stop wasting time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one." So stop waiting for confidence to show up on its own. Think like someone who already lives in abundance. Act like someone who is already building results. Repeat it with such firmness that the world has no choice but to recognize it. Comment, "I'm living like someone who has already won because the world doesn't respond to what you promise. It responds to what you practice." And if this message resonated with you, share it with someone who's also ready to turn the key. Sometimes a single sincere phrase is worth more than 1,000 frustrated attempts. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one.